At 6 a.m. in Saigon, it's 32 degrees Celsius. That's 90 degrees Fahrenheit, with 80% humidity. On every street corner, millions of people are clutching cups of something that looks like a dessert. It's coffee so sweet it tastes like cake batter, and so strong it could power a motorbike. In the West, we drink coffee to wake up. But here, this isn't just a caffeine fix. It's a survival strategy. This drink is a 150-year-old convergence of colonial history, physics, and sheer ingenuity. It's not just a beverage. It's one of the most carefully optimized systems in everyday life. But to understand how it works, we have to start with the bean that almost destroyed an entire industry. I'm John, a Vietnamese-American living here full-time. And when I first moved back, I honestly thought everyone was just addicted to caffeinated candy that somehow passed for coffee. See, I was used to Arabica, the premium bean that makes up 90% of American coffee shops. It's smooth, aromatic, and costs 3 times more than its cousin. But there was something I didn't know about Vietnam's coffee story. When the French colonized Vietnam in the 1800s, they had a problem. They wanted to recreate their café culture. But Arabica beans, the ones they were used to, kept dying in Vietnam's soil. The climate was too harsh, the altitude was wrong, and the humidity killed everything. They were about to give up entirely. But then they discovered something the soil here was actually optimized for: Robusta. Now, Robusta is the industrial strength bean. It grows faster, survives harsher conditions, and contains nearly 2 times the caffeine of Arabica. But here's the catch. It tastes absolutely terrible. We're talking about a bean so bitter, so harsh, that even coffee addicts would spit it out. Raw Robusta tastes like someone mixed coffee grounds with tree bark and a hint of burnt rubber. In America, we'd call this bad coffee and charge 50% less for it. Local ingenuity saw raw material that just needed the right processing system. And then they faced an even bigger problem. Picture this. It's 1890 Saigon. There's no refrigeration infrastructure. No way to keep anything fresh in 35 degrees Celsius heat. That's 95 Fahrenheit, with 80% humidity. Fresh milk would spoil in hours, sometimes minutes. The French colonizers were used to adding fresh cream to their coffee. But in Vietnam, that cream would literally curdle before you could finish brewing. They were facing a dairy logistics nightmare that seemed impossible to solve. And then someone made a discovery that would accidentally create one of the world's most addictive flavor combinations: condensed milk. By removing 60% of the water and adding massive amounts of sugar, you create a dairy product that's shelf-stable for years. But here's the functional advantage. That extreme sweetness and fat content weren't just preservation methods. They were the only things powerful enough to neutralize Robusta's bitterness. The sugar cuts the acid. The fat coats your tongue against the harsh tannins. They had accidentally discovered the perfect chemical neutralization system. They turned a low-quality bean into a high-energy dessert that could survive the tropics. But they still had one massive problem. The coffee was so concentrated, so intense, that drinking it hot was like drinking liquid fire. And in Vietnam's heat, drinking something that intense, while it was boiling hot, wasn't just uncomfortable. It was an engineering problem waiting for a solution. That's when they stumbled onto something that would change everything. Walk into any Vietnamese coffee shop today, and you won't see a $15,000 espresso machine. You'll see a $2 aluminum gravity filter called a phin. Now, this might look primitive, but the phin is actually a precision instrument. It's anti-speed by design. It takes 5 to 7 minutes to brew a single serving, and there's a scientific reason for this. The slow extraction creates what's essentially a coffee concentrate, a thick, oily syrup with the consistency of maple syrup and the caffeine content of an energy drink. We're talking about coffee so strong that a single shot contains more caffeine than 2 cups of American coffee. This concentration wasn't a bug. It was a feature. But drinking it required solving an engineering problem that would take decades to perfect. The secret to the system is packing the glass with large ice cubes. When you do that, the ice acts as a timed-release dilution engine. As it melts in the heat, it gradually transforms that undrinkable syrup into something balanced. But the real utility is in the timing. The ice melts at exactly the right rate to create the perfect strength coffee just as you're ready to drink it. It's a self-regulating cooling and dilution engine that requires zero electricity, zero maintenance, and costs almost nothing. However, there was still one more problem they needed to solve, and this one was about human behavior. Here's something most people don't realize about Vietnamese coffee. It's not just a drink. It's a social technology. In Ho Chi Minh City, 9 million people are compressed into spaces designed for 2 million. Your apartment might be 20 square meters. That's 215 square feet. Privacy doesn't exist. Personal space is a luxury most people can't afford. So where do you go when you need to think? The coffee shop becomes your extended living room. And here's the practical part. Because the fin drips slowly and the ice melts gradually, a single 25,000 Vietnamese dong coffee, that's about $1, becomes a 2-hour lease on social space. You're not just buying caffeine, you're buying time and territory in one of the world's most densely packed cities. The iced coffee is a social regulator that forces you to slow down in a city moving at breakneck speed. But there's an even deeper layer to this system. Something that connects to the very biology of survival in extreme heat. Here's what's happening inside your body when it's 95 degrees outside, and your core temperature is 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. You're operating in a 2-degree thermal margin. That's the difference between comfortable and heat stroke. Now, if you've followed this channel, you know I've talked about how Vietnamese people eat boiling hot soup to stay cool. It sounds like a contradiction, right? But here is the nuance. Eating a hot meal is a thermal reset. It forces a massive sweat that cools you down via evaporation. It's an event. Coffee, however, is a duration. You're sipping this for 90 minutes. Now, you might think, John, why not just order it hot and let it cool down naturally? Here's why. In this humidity, a hot coffee doesn't stay hot, but it also never gets truly cold. It settles into a lukewarm dead zone. And for a high tannin Robusta bean, that's a disaster. As the temperature drops slowly, the coffee oxidizes, making the bitterness sharp and metallic. By packing the glass with ice, you aren't just cooling the drink, you are flash locking the flavor. The ice keeps the drink at a constant, crisp temperature for the entire 2 hours, preventing the coffee from decaying into something undrinkable while you're using that chair. It's the same reason why the spiciest food comes from the hottest countries. Heat management through counterintuitive solutions. The Vietnamese coffee system is actually a sophisticated thermoregulation technology disguised as a beverage. Here's the final piece of the puzzle, and it's the most important one. Vietnamese iced coffee isn't just optimized for survival, it's optimized for addiction. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean it's engineered to create the perfect habit loop. The high caffeine content from Robusta beans creates a stronger physical dependency than Arabica. The sugar from condensed milk triggers dopamine release. The slow brewing process creates anticipation. The ice-cold temperature provides immediate relief from heat stress. But here's the critical part. The entire ritual takes 15 to 20 minutes from start to finish. That's exactly the right amount of time to create a meditative break in your day without losing productivity momentum. They've created a habit loop that doubles as a stress release, a social ritual, and a productivity tool. This is why you see 100 million Vietnamese people starting their day with this exact same ritual. It's not just cultural tradition, it's biological optimization at a national scale. Here in Vietnam, there is a consistent track record of taking seemingly wrong inputs. Bitter beans, spoiled milk, crushing heat, and engineer them into winning systems. This is about a fundamental approach to problem solving that turns constraints into advantages. Every limitation becomes a design parameter. I apply that same optimization thinking to my investment decisions. Instead of guessing which stocks might work, I want to see the underlying mechanics. That's why I use Seeking Alpha. It gives me quant ratings and data-driven analysis to separate the robust investments from the ones that just taste good on paper. There's an exclusive discount link in the description if you want that same level of systematic thinking for your portfolio. So why is Vietnamese coffee always iced? Because it's not really coffee. It's a system refined over 150 years to work in extreme conditions. It's sweet enough to neutralize industrial-strength bitterness, cold enough to regulate body temperature in extreme heat, strong enough to power a nation of 100 million people, slow enough to create social space in the world's most densely packed cities, and addictive enough to ensure the entire system perpetuates itself. Every element that seems wrong to Western coffee culture is actually perfectly optimized for Vietnamese reality. The bitter beans, the canned milk, the ice, the slow brewing. It's a system so well adapted that most people don't even notice how intentional it is. But this optimization mindset goes much deeper than coffee. And that brings us to our next investigation. Why does this entire country wake up at 5 a.m.? Why is the loudest, most chaotic part of the day before the sun even rises? We're diving into Vietnam's dawn economy, a productivity system so counterintuitive that it's going to change how you think about time management forever. And here's a hint. It has everything to do with that iced coffee we just talked about. Subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss it, because what you're about to discover will make you question everything you think you know about when humans are supposed to be awake. I'll see you at sunrise.